Hello and welcome to Adobe Live from the sofa here in the UK, where you will find us every day or every weekday at any rate between 12 and 1. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, that is just fine. But if you want to really get involved and ask questions of our fabulous guests, then join us on behance.net/Adobe Live, where you can become a real part of the community. Now, today we are joined by my co-host Maddie. Hi, Maddie.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, and our incredible guest, Claire Luxton. Hi, Claire. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you guys?
Oh, we're good, I think. What about you, Mads? Are you all right over there in the diff?
In Cardiff, yes, I'm good. I loved yesterday, so I'm back for more today. Can't wait to get stuck
Can't
in.
get enough.
I
There
can't.
we are. Oh, that's really good. We've got a lot of our regulars here joining us in the chat. So we get some really great people on here, Claire. They're always super enthusiastic and full of questions, you'll be pleased to know.
Perfect.
But just to give a shout out to some of those. So hi, Sean. Hello, Sean. Hi, Rye. Caroline. Hello. Andreas is here. Hello, Andreas. Robert's here. Fantastic. So all of our regulars, the Teamster, hello, the Teamster, Carrie, and plenty more. So excellent. Well, we'll get to chatting to you guys as we go along. But Claire,
Hello.
people who've never met you before or seen your work, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
So I am a multidisciplinary artist, which I think is something I actually fought against for quite a few years, because I kind of felt like, a jack of all trades and master of none. But I think eventually I kind of grew into that practice after university, using all of my different disciplines, sculpture, painting, photography, and poetry, and kind of learned to embrace a way to combine those different elements together in my practice, which actually gives me a lot more freedom than just having one medium that I use or one discipline that I'm involved in. I'm able to combine all of my different passions into one love. So I've been a full-time practicing artist for, I think I'm coming into my 4th year now professionally. I just quit my job and was like, I'm gonna give this a whirl full-time, and haven't looked back since. So people probably mainly know my work from Instagram, which is mainly like the bulk of my photography, but I'm a practicing fine artist. So I've exhibited in lots of different countries and work with different galleries in London to exhibit my work, painting, sculpture and photography. So that's kind of like little basis of me in a nutshell.
You've done all of this stuff in just that short time.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
Quite. I mean, so it's like my 4th tax year, but coming into like so I graduated from Goldsmiths, where I studied fine art in 2014. And then I worked for a year in an architect's office at London Bridge.
Okay.
It was one of those situations. It's like, oh, I have an art degree. Yay! What do I do with my art degree? I got a sensible job and I started commuting, and dressed sensibly. And I knew it was never for me, and I knew that I wanted to do something with my passion for my work. And after about a year of working there, I started working with a gallery in London, selling my paintings to Asia, actually, because they were very bright and colourful, and the Asian market really seemed to enjoy what I was creating at the time. So I started selling, and I was like, I'm actually making enough at the moment to be able to support myself. And if I was doing this full time, then I'd have more resources and more time to put into, developing my practice. So in 2015, I went full time around the middle of the year. And that's the same time I started my Instagram as well, as a platform to just, at the time, just share whatever I was doing. And yeah, so since then it's kind of been a bit of a whirlwind, really, just kind of learning. And I think one of my first projects with Adobe was either in, I think possibly like late 2015. So yeah, it's been a busy few years, really.
It's amazing that you've created that volume of work and the colours. If you in the community, if you've not had a chance to check out Claire's Instagram, do that. Tim's popped the link into the chat for you. It really
I can have a little jump onto it. So we've got on my website here. We've got some variety.
Yeah, let's see some stuff. That's cool.
This was a piece that I actually did for, as it just loads, for Adobe for their Honor Heroes campaign. So for the NHS, so this was a piece that I actually did recently for that, which was really special actually, because obviously it's been such an unusual time, and to be able to kind of pull together as a creative community and use our skills to kind of highlight key workers and people who wouldn't necessarily normally be recognized, and to add your own touch and emotions into it was quite a special thing, really.
That's amazing.
Claire, I can see you're in a lot of your work,
yes,
in a lot of your pictures. And did you start by taking lots of images that you then use and time again, and or did you take a new fresh picture for every different project that you do?
So it's weird. So I started out by using photography as an experimental medium. It was almost like how I would plan my artwork. I have like a very cinematic, over-imaginative brain. So it would be this way of kind of capturing moments in the everyday, like mundane things, little facial expressions, a dripping tap, a puddle that had a cool reflection. It would just be like little nuances in everyday life. And I would just photograph them and keep them and do collages and sketchbooks and kind of decide how I was going to use my work. And then over a period of time, I started to enjoy the photography as much as what I was turning it into. So I started focusing more on the photography practice. And I think I did used to, I remember when I was at, when I was doing my foundation course at Canterbury, I remember I would rope my friends in. I did a project where I got them to lay face down in the streets of Canterbury, and I would just photograph them while strangers walked past them, and they'd lay on staircases and like on park benches. It was a really inspired project. But at first I would rope people in, but then I was so interested in kind of tapping into like a really like vulnerable part of our emotions, and I kind of felt the only honest way to do that was to use myself, because I could kind of push myself to an uncomfortable place to be vulnerable with myself and kind of try and be truthful in my vulnerabilities. So that's when I started using myself within my photography and developing my practice that way. So I would say, yeah, primarily I am a self-portrait artist. Even when I was working in painting and sculpture, which we can come to, it was very much still self-portraiture, though I didn't really realize it at the time. But the process was about me being physical with the work, and how sometimes that would be very laborious, or it might be quite an uncomfortable process. So after a while, it kind of became that I was part of the artwork. And I mean, intrinsically, artists are, they always say that when you paint a face, you paint your own face. But I think you obviously, it's like when you have a writer, they say that the writer somehow writes themselves in the character. Because I think it's, it's what it's a truth within yourself. But yeah, so now when I'm shooting self-portraiture, I always try and tap into something I'm trying to explore, something I'm trying to explain, something that makes me feel uncomfortable, something that's a bit uncanny, the things that make us nervous or vulnerable. I think I'm of a romantics philosophy where, you know, like pain is beauty and darkness is beauty, like seeing beauty in sadness and darkness, really. So those are things I definitely tap into. But I do shoot other people as well, but it's harder to get somebody else to go to that precipice and jump off with you.
Yeah. And then there's a comment here from Catherine, oh sorry Tony, who asked, who does your makeup and hair? Because it's stunning, and she also loves your self-portraits as well.
Oh, thank you. I do everything myself. So I'm a one-woman show. So it's kind of, it's why sometimes my projects take so long, because I do all of the lighting myself. I do all of the prop and set design myself. I do my hair, my makeup, the photography, the post-production. So it's a lot sometimes. And I'm definitely a perfectionist, and I'm extremely self-critical, which I kind of like to incorporate within my work. But yeah, so it's kind of, it's all me.
Do you know what I find in some of your work is right on the edge of truly dark, right on the edge of truly, but there is love in there. There's hope and there's love in there at the same time. And that's what really strikes me about your work, is that it's not dark, but totally hopeless. There's something else there that just lifts it above the dark. That is really, really hard to pull off.
Oh, thank you.
You know, I think that's what I think makes your work stand out so much. That and the vibrancy and everything else about it. But
oh, thank you. Gosh,
definitely.
Yeah, I think that it does come from that. You know, I think, you know, I love reading, I love books, and I kind of think of, you know, the Brontes, for example, and think of, you know, something like Wuthering Heights, and how everybody loves Heathcliff, but he's not a great person.
No.
Let's face it, like him and Kathy, they're not the best of people, and that whole everyone romanticizes that whole story. It's so beautiful and breathtaking, and the rugged landscapes, but it's pretty harrowing. It's dark. It's dark. You know, it's you know, kind of gothic, but beautiful and soft. And I think it's that kind of softness and vulnerability combined with the harshness of reality. And I think it's why I combine nature in my work quite a lot, because I'm always been fascinated with how we need nature to survive, and also we're not always the best to nature sometimes. We can be very destructive, but then equally, whilst nature is also vulnerable, it can also be very destructive. So we sort of tread this fine line with nature where we're on a precipice, this kind of balance that sometimes tips in the favour of us or in the favour of nature. And I think that kind of maybe draws in the softness, but also kind of plays into the darkness at the same time.
I think Caroline in the chat is saying that your work shows vulnerability. It's what makes it less dark, perhaps, and she thinks it's beautiful work.
Oh, thank you,
Claire. Do you want to pick a few out from the chat, Maddie? So have you got any that you want to pick out from there?
Sure. I was having a look. Do you know, when you were mentioning earlier the amount of work that you put into your work, and the fact that you do so much, you know, the hair and the makeup and the photography, talk to us about your live shows. As you mentioned, you've done a couple of big exhibits around the world. How do you, you know, add, you know, more of a big effect to those? How do you do that?
So what I'll do is I'll pull up, I've got a PowerPoint, because I can kind of, I'll scroll just to, let's go to this one. So when I'm curating an exhibition, so this was from my solo show, Botanica, which was in 2018. And one of the things I like to do is to make it as much an immersive experience as possible. So whether I'm combining fragrance or sound or lighting to make the whole environment come alive, and, you know, even if it's just for 5 minutes, transport the viewer or whoever's come to the show into my brain as much as possible, into just take them outside of themselves just for a minute so that they can experience something else, even if it's not what I experience or what you experience. It's just it's taking them away from something for a moment. So in this show, I actually collaborated with a Scandinavian brand, wallpaper brand. So I've actually got my own wallpaper range with them. It's still available today. Yeah, not a plug, but it is still available. But yeah, so this was one of the wallpapers. So I had a massive mural wall in the exhibition. This is another shot from one of my exhibitions. So obviously it's lit brightly just so I could photograph it, but we had the whole exhibition like very dark, and we kind of had music playing that kind of had sounds of, you know, nature and birds, water and wind, and I made this like dried flower sculpture in the middle, and each of the artworks that was on show had these tiny little almost like apothecary bottles next to the artwork. And so instead of like when you go to like a traditional gallery show, you'll have like a little card on the wall next to the artwork that, you know, it says the name and the dimensions, etc., etc. And I really didn't want that, because I wanted it to feel like you were in like an old Edwardian apothecary. So I got these apothecary bottles and a solution, and whatever flowers I'd used in that image, I kind of preserved in the apothecary bottle. And then the label, which was on the bottle, which hung next to the work, was the title, and it kind of had all of the flowers' names in Latin on them. I can't remember all of the Latin names.
Wow.
Don't ask me.
Wow.
We're cool on that. Tim, if you can put everything in Latin in the chat, that would be great.
I'll work on that. But yeah, so you can kind of see just about in this picture, you've got the bottles hanging next to the artworks, but you can see some of the lighting that I had in this upper picture was kind of very like moody and atmospheric. And also, I think this picture shows it best, but my artworks from that Botanica collection, they're printed very big. They're 150 by 120 centimeters, and I cover them in resin and then cover them in diamond dust. Diamond dust is crushed shards of glass. And one of the reasons why I love diamond dust so much is because it's beautiful, but it's also extremely like deadly. Not deadly, but it literally it when you're working with it, it gives you these tiny little like cuts, because it's so razor sharp. So it's one of those things that, you know, it's alluring and beautiful, like a Venus flytrap almost, but it's also kind of got a bite to it. So it's kind of look but don't touch.
That's like the shark skin finish, if you like. Some species of sharks have basically that texture on their skin, which will do that. So you've created like kind of a shark skin, a beautiful shark skin.
Beautiful shark skin.
It's gorgeous. Really cool. I mean, to be honest, I've got it on a big screen right above this one over here. So my eyes are drawn between between the big screen at the back there. It's fantastic.
It's so good. And you know, there is a question about lighting here, actually. Robert asked, how do you get the lighting set up for self-portraits?
Okay, so when I first started shooting, I would say I was primarily a natural light photographer, purely because you could well, it's free for when you're first starting out, but also because it, you know, when you've got your DSLR or whatever you're shooting on, you can look through the lens and you can see what the image is going to come out like, you know, so you can set your lighting, you can set your f-stop, you can set your exposure, everything like that. And with natural light, you can see how the image is going to come out. But obviously with natural light, results can be very inconsistent because, you know, the lighting changes and you've just set up and then the sun's disappeared. So it can be very, it can also be difficult, and, you know, you have to wait for like a certain time of day, etc., etc. So I started to teach myself studio lighting because it also came in very handy for when I was like doing a commercial job or you know, something like that. It became a tool that I felt like I needed. So I taught myself studio lighting from going to different studios and just working on different projects. And then I invested in my own studio lighting. So I use like a pro photo setup. And it's heavily trial and error. I think that there's maybe a misconception that, you know, people just get on the set and they just shoot kind of thing. But I spend a lot of time making sure that, you know, I could spend 2-3 hours just setting up the lighting. So I'll often use like a mannequin's head with a wig on it. I was just wondering
if you did that.
I'm not weird, I promise. No, wait, that's a lie. I am weird. I'm super weird. So I'll have like a mannequin's head with a wig on it. And from my website, you can probably see, like, I'm not, like, my hair is turquoisey coloured. So like that here is my hair. But I use wigs, you know, quite frequently in my work. It, you know, helps me transform into a different character. So yeah, I'll use a mannequin's head with a wig, or if my fiance's about, I'll drag him in, shove a wig on his head, and he can stand there for me. And I will literally play, because I don't ever really use a same lighting setup twice. Obviously, you'll learn different setups that you like and that you trust, especially if you were just doing, say, just a normal flattering portrait of someone who just wants a nice headshot, for example. But when I'm shooting like a conceptual idea, I always have like a really set lighting image in my head. So for example, if we look at this piece, Hive, I'll just get my PowerPoint back up. So I always do like a really average like sketch to start with, and it will give me some concept of how I want the lighting to be. So I knew that I wanted kind of like an almost halo ring light effect on this, and this also helps me plan my colors, because I'm really specific when it comes to coloring. And whilst a lot can be done in post-production, and I love post-production, but sometimes it can make your life so much harder if you set yourself up to have to change everything. I'd much rather shoot things so that they're, you know, 80% there, and then I enhance them and make them how I want them to be. Instead of like, if I just shot this with a green background, or which I can't do because of my hair, so I can't use green screen. So like, if anyone's ever been to the Harry Potter Warner Brothers studio tour, I'm a massive Harry Potter fan. There's the bit where you can ride on a broomstick. On the broom, yeah. I'm like dead excited about.
Just your face.
I'm so excited. I'm an egg on a broomstick. Like literally, this disappears and I'm bald. I'm not even bald. It just, like, my head just blends into sky. Yeah.
You need to carry an emergency wig.
I know.
Green screen,
exactly.
quick.
So all of my pictures from the Harry Potter studio tour, I have like my cape up like this, and I'm just like Like,
people are looking at you going, wow, she's really into it.
She's so keen. She's so keen. Yeah, so I can't use green screen anyway. So I just like to make sure that I plan like a color scape. I plan a lighting scape. I plan a setup basically. So with this one, I was using, there's two light sources in this image. There is a continuous light, which is behind my head here. And then you can see in the pupils, there's a light kind of up to my left or right, depending on whether you're looking at the picture or whether you're me in the picture. That's actually a really great tip, I would say, is if you see a photo that you love the lighting of, zoom into the eyes and you can generally figure out how they've shot it from the pupils. Because sometimes you'll see some like beauty photography and they actually have, you'll see like a tiny little like catch in the bottom, and that's probably from a reflector that they've. Yeah,
I was just going to ask if have you got a reflector on that shot? Just underneath?
I don't have a reflector. I don't have a reflector on that shot. No. I have a reflector, but I'm funny with reflectors. I'll only use it if I have to. I sometimes don't like the light that it casts. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. I try to kind of create the light sources as much as possible. I think it's because I like a combination of, I like my images to look like finished, but not too polished. I like them to have a slight like grittiness to them, like a slight edge. I don't want it to look like beauty photography, for example. So I've done the same thing for this image as well. This was another plan that I had. As you can see, at the time I wasn't sure if I wanted the light to come from a candle or from a bulb. I got both. I experimented with both concepts, and the bulb won out because it had a much better cohesiveness with the butterflies. And all of these butterflies are real taxidermy butterflies that I got and shot individually at different positions around the light and then composited it all together.
So striking.
Wow.
But the ones on my face are on my face.
Breathtaking.
Thank you.
Really, really lovely.
It is. Jackie says she wishes her brain was as creative as this, by the way.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. It's a terrifying place to be sometimes. Especially when I can't. My biggest problem is if I can visualize. It must be like when someone composes music. I imagine if they can hear it in their head, then they can write the score. So if I can visualize a mood or a feeling or a visual in my head, then 9 times out of 10 I'm able to create it. However, if I'm at a point where I kind of have an idea but like no concept, like no actual concept, then it's never going to work for me. I'm very visual, so I need to be able to like picture it and sketch it or something like that. This was the sketch I did for the Honor Heroes one. It just really helps me to, just know my process, because it makes it easier in the long run when you're trying to, like, I knew, for example, that I needed to like order a scrubs thing. I kind of knew what color I wanted the scrubs to be. I already had a stethoscope, as you do.
I've got one too.
Yes.
We're good.
We've got one somewhere.
just in case I'm checking I'm still breathing,
Yep, there, it's fine.
And because when I shot this, we'd literally, the whole country had just gone into like the first phase of serious lockdown where, we weren't really doing anything. So all of the flowers in this were, so I literally do live like right in the middle of nowhere. So there's we're surrounded by like woodlands on like either side. So I literally just went and picked all of the wildflowers. So all of these are flowers just like that were around my house.
Wow.
So yeah, I kind of had the concept, kind of knew the colours, and things adapt slightly, but it just gives you a foundation, like a skeleton to work from when you're planning something out, and it always works better for me that way.
Just amazing. It's really amazing. Really love it. Let's have a quick look at what Richard is saying. The talk of Harry Potter and green hair reminded me of an odd 1948 Technicolor film, The Boy with Green Hair. There's a scene where refugee poster children come to life. Very striking. That sounds crazy. Wow. Talking of motion, by the way, when we were chatting earlier on, just before we went live, you've got some motion projects on the go, haven't you? You've got a new YouTube channel.
Yes. So yeah. I've literally, it's my new child, as it were. I've just launched my, where's my link? So I've just launched, it's going to start playing. I've just launched my YouTube channel. I love cinematography. I love video. I love watching films. I love motion. And I kind of just wanted a way to not only, when on Instagram, there's kind of after you built a following, there's kind of like an expectation, which is absolutely fine. And I mean, there's no one restricting you from posting whatever you want on Instagram, but I kind of like using it just to share like my finished artworks.
Right.
But most of the people only know me for my photography, but not for my sculpture, painting and poetry. So I wanted to launch a YouTube channel where I could start to share processes with people. So I would be able to, show them start to finish of a photo shoot. So, literally chat to them in the early stages where I'm like, so my brain has this idea and we're going to do a sketch, and then we're going to order all of the resources that I need. And then, people can see all of the different stages that I'm working through, concept to reality in a photo shoot. So when I've shown you those, the sketch and then the finished artwork, kind of showing you that in between bit, like what happens, with the lighting, with my mannequin, with the wig on it, with me doing my hair and makeup, and how I attach flowers and all of that kind of thing. But then also to share a similar process that I work with when I paint and sculpt as well, because when I like with my Botanica collection, I'll show some pictures in a minute. That was almost like sculpting to create the image. But so I don't know if people would people hear the volume if I play these videos? Will people be able to hear it?
Probably not, because we didn't enable computer audio at the beginning. No,
that's fine.
But not to worry. I'm sure everybody will rush there. And Tim's put the link into the chat too.
So it just kind of shows kind of like where I am, what I'm doing, and my different processes, the diamond dust and whatnot. So it's a new process, and it's a completely different platform, and I'm really excited to start sharing something different.
That's so
different
cool
format. But it takes so much more planning, because obviously I need to film myself, photographing myself,
direct yourself,
all myself,
all of it.
So it is quite a lot. But so I was going to show you. So my Botanica collection, which was actually in collaboration with McQueen's, London. So McQueen's have like a whole flower studio. And so they sponsored me on this project, and I went to London and I just spent the afternoon with them in the flower studio, just picked all of the different types of flowers that I wanted to use. So again, these are all self-portraits with the flowers. And what I was really thinking about for this piece was kind of like, imagine a like scientific like petri dish with bacteria on it, and then it's like under a microscope. So my whole concept was kind of like I was on a scientific slide under a microscope, and this is what you were kind of seeing through the microscope. These were these little ecosystems, and the way I shot them, which was extremely glamorous, was I built this is where I was saying sometimes my sculpture and painting kind of creeps back in. So I built this like 6 foot by 6 foot wooden cube, almost like wooden trellis table.
Right.
And then I ordered acrylic perspex that could sustain my weight, and that went on top of the hollow table.
Yeah.
And then on top of the table, I arranged all of the flowers, the ink, the resin, the water. Then my camera went underneath, and I climbed on top and shot from below.
Wow. Wow.
So
is that the frame that we saw? We saw a glimpse of a frame, a black frame.
Yeah.
Is that the frame?
Oh no. So that actually is a good indication. So if we go back to, so this is like I put this in here because I've never really shared this on like social media or anything. So this is going back to like my really early sculptural work. So at university, well, actually, when I was younger, my dad taught me how to weld.
Cool, handy skill to have.
Yeah, it's a great skill to have.
It is.
So yeah, my dad taught me how to weld, and so at university they had a fantastic metal workshop. So I was really obsessed with building these metal structures that disrupted a space, and it kind of comes back to this idea of physicality and people interacting and people's emotions. So what I did was I kind of built these sculptures that I kind of wanted to feel slightly ominous, but then kind of simplistically beautiful at the same time. And I just wouldn't tell anybody that I was going to be putting them there, and I just would place them overnight in like places around university, and then people would have to navigate them the next day. Yeah, I got in a bit of trouble sometimes, but it was worth it. It was all good.
Wow.
Because I would just find people just like sat in the middle of the cube, like reading a book, or people just like walking through it. Some people would walk around it. I kind of found it like quite an interesting like social experiment. But yeah, it's like basically I built a wooden version of this, and it had perspex over the top, and then the camera would have been like on the floor shooting upwards, and I would have been on top, and I bruised like an absolute peach, so I was completely battered after shooting this series. Hence I say it's like not glamorous. So this was some of my early sculptural work. This was another sculptural piece that I did, which was called False Lights, and when it was lit, you can see in the first picture everything like reflected and refracted, and the large pieces of metal like slightly groaned when they moved. So you had this kind of I was researching the ocean a lot at the time. As I said, I've always been drawn to nature, so when I was creating these pieces, I was researching like old like sea mythology, and kind of like the idea of a lighthouse and sirens, and being drawn to darkness, again themes that kind of recrop up in my work. But yes, so this was and the floor was mirrored, so when you walked and stood over it, you were kind of all immersed in all of these different structures. And this piece was actually a commission that I did a couple of years ago for JP Morgan. That's in their building in No. 1 Knightsbridge. So it was kind of like coming full circle for me. Something I did at university, I was now getting commissioned to do professionally. So it was quite cool.
Wow. You've got so much appreciation, by the way, in the chat. You've got, I mean, Siobhan says, love this work. Catherine says, Claire, great skill, especially if you can spot well, that's quicker.
Yes.
Jackie's also added, Claire is awesome. Oh, to have those opportunities and skills, she said.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so lovely.
Absolutely loving it. By the way, for everybody who is in the chat, and for those of you watching, if you've only joined us here for the first time, which is welcome, this doesn't have to stop at the end of the stream, because you can join us on our Discord channel, and Tim has helpfully, thanks Tim, popped that into the chat just now. And if you're not seeing the Discord link in the chat, that means you're probably watching on YouTube. So just pop across to behance.net/Adobe Live and join us there, where you can see all of this stuff, and of course ask Claire some questions. There you are. Sorry Claire, quick service link so you can
It's fine, stop me just rambling. I'll just keep
no, it's wonderful, really
wonderful. Never rambling. You've already got a few requests to come back. Robert's always said, I could listen to Claire's creative thinking all day. When's she coming back?
Oh, lovely.
And we do part 2 with Claire from Siobhan. See, everyone loves this.
Oh, that's so good. I also did this because I was putting this together yesterday, and it was kind of like, me delving into like my own history of myself, like researching myself. It's like, what did I do? So I put this together, which was quite interesting. So a piece of recent photography next to one of my old paintings, which one of these went to, I think it went to Abu Dhabi, I think. But it's quite interesting. I did this with this piece as well. It's quite interesting to see how like the textures and the colours I've almost like still reflected in my current photography, and like the shapes. And yeah, I don't know, it was like a weird reflective moment for me, like looking at old paintings and then looking at how I've kind of translated that into my photography.
That's just amazing. Anybody who throws paint around as well is awesome.
Yeah, I know. It's like my tripods are just like covered in paint, and people are like, "What is that?" I'm like, "It's paint." Like,
yeah,
and it's like when a week later, when I find like paint like in this bit of my ear, and I'm like, why did no one tell me I still have like paint in my ear? Like, what is this? Do
you find the edges? I used to find that, I still do. I have a big cathedral easel down in the garage over there, but I still find the edges of the easel which have caught paint to be really, really interesting, because they've got a sort of a micro mountainous landscape, but they're just full of colour.
It's so nice. Sometimes like the mistakes, like if you've put like a drop cloth down and all the paint's like fallen, or even just like my trousers where I've just been like wiping my brushes, sometimes I'm like, oh, that looks great. Why didn't I do that? I actually thought another project that would be really interesting to talk about was this project that I did for the Birmingham Royal Ballet. So they had a new season of Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf coming up, and they'd seen that it was actually from something I'd done. So I'd done a project with Adobe. It was like an Adobe stock challenge, and they'd asked me to create an image to share with you guys, which was using a stock image, and I'd basically done half of my face and then half of a stock image, an animal's face. I think I definitely did a fox for one of them, and I did like a panther for another one, and everyone like really loved it. And the commissioning director at the Birmingham Royal Ballet had seen these images that I'd created, and they were like, we'd love you to combine that artwork and shoot the campaign for our Peter and the Wolf campaign. So I was really excited about this, but I was adamant that I wanted to shoot the animals myself, because I didn't want to use stock images for this project. I wanted to kind of, have complete creative autonomy over like the whole shoot. So the first part of the shoot was I went to Birmingham and I shot 8 of the ballet dancers. Now, each of the dancer was embodying a different animal from Peter and the wolf. So the animals that I ended up needing was a wolf, as you do, a duck, a blue tit, and what was the other animal? There was another animal, I can't remember.
Right.
But so I basically researched how I could get hold of these animals. I found these amazing trainers in Kent, and they came to the studio for the day, and I had all of the animals in the studio at once.
Wow.
And like the duck was trying to like run up the infinity wall. It was just kept on getting to the top of the infinity wall and like sliding all the way back down again. But yeah, so it was like a really cool project. So this was so they actually had a female playing Peter in the like reinterpretation, which I thought was really cool. And then this ballerina was playing the duck, and then he was playing the blue tit. Now, the story behind this blue tit is you can't keep blue tits in captivity in England.
Wildlife and Countryside Act, remember?
Yeah.
Yep.
So they had, I think it was a finch, or it was a different type of bird that they had, which spent a good, couple of hours flying around the rafters when we lost it of the studio. But when we got it back, I got a really great shot of the bird, and then I just I copied a photo of a blue tit and painted in all of the colouring onto that bird to make it look like a blue tit.
Oh, cool.
That looks so realistic, though. Like it looks like a blue tit.
Yeah. So that was
I can't believe they're real animals. I honestly, I'm so obviously I can believe it from what I see, but knowing that you had them in the studio, wow!
It was really funny, and I've since used. I was shooting Nikki Lily. She's like a YouTuber and influencer. We did like a Viking princess photo shoot for a cover of a magazine, and so I got the same team back, which is one of those great things when you make connections in the industry, and then you can go back and use the same people again. So we had the wolf dogs on set. This wolf dog is called Dora, and she has two different coloured eyes. One's brown and one's blue. And this time we also had a parrot as well, which was really exciting because he didn't want to be photographed.
Okay.
But we did get him in the end. The way to photograph parrot is with peanut butter. Put peanut butter on the stick that you want him to sit on, and you will eventually get him.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Wow.
That was really fun. Scrolling.
They're so fabulous. Honestly, people are really, really loving this as well. Isaac's saying so much creativity. There's people. The fact that they can now know there's somewhere they can actually watch your process, finding that really, really exciting. And I think that's what a lot of people really enjoy about these things every day, is they get to discover a little bit more, because you may have an idea, but it's bringing that idea to life and how do I even get started? So having someone like you on that shares all of that stuff is illuminating for everybody, I think. Really.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's been quite. I'm working on a video at the moment, because I don't have on my YouTube at the moment. It's kind of like a lot of just like, I wanted to like introduce myself, where I am, my settings, a little bit of like a morning in the studio. But I'm currently working on like my first concept to reality series video, which is going to be like the full process. So it's a new set of portraits that I'm working on, and I've been trying to film and document the whole thing so I can put it on. I think it's interesting because it is quite an unusual position to be in, because traditionally as an artist I very much like to lock myself away and just be like, nobody look, it's not finished. Don't look at me. You know, like when I used to be at home, like my mum and dad would like come and like look over my shoulder and I'm like, what are you looking at? Like, it's not done. Like, don't judge. And so I think it's really interesting being a little bit more vulnerable in like sharing your work at the different stages of a process, and like when it goes wrong, because that's reality. It's not always just gonna like work, but I generally find that it's in those moments where things go wrong that you kind of discover how to make it go right. So that's a bonus in itself. So I do have a couple of working documents up just to show. I wanted to show like the initial layers that I use when I'm editing. Like I generally tend to have like a process, and then after that it's then like I just kind of experiment, because for me when I have a raw image, I like to think of it as kind of like the structure of a canvas. So it's almost like you've laid like the underpainting and then you go in and paint. So this is, you've obviously seen the finished image so far. So this is literally the raw image, nothing done to it. Actually, the only thing that will have been done is I shoot everything in RAW. I think it's really important to shoot everything raw, because you just have more control over the file at the end of the day. There's more image content retained. You've got more room to play in the shadows and the highlights. So the image is more flexible once you've shot it. I mean, I understand people wanting to shoot in JPEG, but I would, if you want to do any kind of like post-processing, I would definitely recommend shooting raw.
You need what the sensors found, right, rather than an algorithm running to optimize it for file.
Exactly. So the only thing that might have been done to this image is I probably will have done some like maybe lens correction before I brought it in to Photoshop. So the first thing that I like to do is kind of like, I don't always crop, but just to make sure that the image is how I want it to be. So if I'm going to straighten it up, if I want it to be bigger and adding in stuff around the edges, or if I want it to be smaller, cropping is the first thing that I'll do, just so I roughly know this is going to be the foundation of my image. The next thing that I'll do is retouching the skin. Now this doesn't have to be this like heavy-handed like airbrushing. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. So the first thing that I like to do is the skin. So if I click the skin layer on and off, you can kind of see it's like a subtle difference.
It is a light touch though. It's nice. So I use frequency separation to do this. I know that a lot of people love dodge and burn. I don't know if it's that I don't have the patience for it, or whether I just find this works for me. I do use dodge and burn, but for something completely different. So it's just kind of, we'll just zoom in. It's more about, it's not even a vanity thing. It's just so that the image, you're not distracted by something that I don't want you to be distracted by. So it's just like a subtle cleaning up. Like I still want you to see my freckles. I still want the skin to kind of look like skin. I've kept my moles in and things like that. I've just got rid of some things that I find distracting from the eye. So that's like that's the first stage that I always do. And also it's just little things like this bit of hair, like just behind the ear, just cleaning that up, things like that I find distracting.
And Claire, sorry to jump in, Gareth has asked a good question, which I want to know the answer to as well, which is, What's frequency separation?
Okay, so I'll open this layer. So you basically separate the images out into, so if I take off this blur layer, the image there looks overly sharpened. And again, if I take off the layer that's labeled texture, the image looks overly soft. So you basically separate out into the image a really soft, blurry layer and a really high sharpened layer. And what you're doing is on the blurry, the texture layer is almost like all of the contours of the image. This is, I mean, there's probably someone who's extremely techie who could explain this much better than me, but this is my understanding of how it works in my brain. And the blurry layer is kind of like the pigmentation. That's how I see it. So the way I work it is I use a patch brush, like a healing brush, and I will just, on the blur layer, I will just go in and I will even out the skin tone. So it's not changing the texture, it's changing the color that's underneath. And then normally you should only really need to do a tiny bit to the texture layer. The way I use it, I do most of my stuff in the blur layer, which is just balancing out. So like if I have like this little dark shadow here, I can like sample this bit of color there, and oh, my scratch disc's full. I knew this was going to happen.
No, don't worry, don't worry. I think we're going to have you back for this one anyway. This is going to be awesome. So, and we've got like about 5 or 10 minutes left, if that's okay as well.
Oh no, that's fine. So we'll zoom back out. Then the next thing that I do is I'll add in anything that I'm going to composite into the image. So the next thing that I added in was the moths. So without the moths, with the moths. And the way that you get the perspective right for me is, so I shoot everything the same. So I had the camera set up, don't move the setup. I shoot myself there, then I remove myself from the scene. Then I had all of the real taxidermy butterflies on fishing wire, and I'll go back in and I'll shoot them at the exact position that I want so that the focal length is correct. Yeah. So that you get the correct depth perspective and you get the light hitting them in the correct way. In the exact way, yeah. Then I'll add in curves, and then I'll add in some color toning, and then I'll probably like go back, and because this is like the main base of my image. It's not fully finished here. I'll then go back in. I said I used dodge and burn. What I love to do is I use a dodge and burn layer to kind of build in highlights and shadows to enhance the natural places that light's hitting the face. So I'll go back in and I'll re-highlight this shoulder. I'll add more light into the eye if it's necessary, darken areas that I want, the contours on the skin I'll add different definition to. But for each image, because I also have this one open here.
Yeah, so there you're just using a neutral grey layer, right, set to overlay and dodging and burning on that.
Using black and white, a black and white brush set with quite a low, maybe like a flow of like 2 or 3%, depending on what I'm doing.
Oh, so really feather-like touch really on that.
I'll spend because otherwise it can, I mean, I know that you can just undo it. It's not like an actual painting, but it just allows you just to kind of gradually build up, and sometimes I'll just take a step away and then I'll come back, because you can, after you've been like editing for 6 hours, you can get super engrossed and then you're like, oh my god, what have I done? What does this look like? But again, this is another image, the hive image, and I've started off with the skin. I've then added in the bees, which were again real taxidermy bees. Then I've recolored the lips and the eyes. Then I've added an overall general color. But then I would then go further, and I would to get from this to this. It's a lot more other layers.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, do you know what, Claire? I'm so reluctant to stop you, because I think we could all just sit here and just carry on soaking this up. It's really, we're going to have you back, right? You know that.
Of course,
I've got
so much more to ramble on about.
Oh no, but it's. I think everybody, I know I have, Mads, you can just tell by your face that you've been like...
I'm just in awe right now. This is Christmas to me. I mean, seriously, your work is amazing.
Thank you.
Do you know, the one image that stays with me is the one with the plaster that says hope.
Yeah.
That has flowers under the eye.
Yeah, and we all bleed. Yeah.
Gosh, I actually have
that tattooed on my arm.
Wow.
Here, because it was just such a special piece for me, and collectors have been buying it recently, and it's also been in Glamour, Germany, and Italy.
Wow.
Yeah, so this has been a very special artwork for me.
It's amazing. Do you know what, Claire? Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today. We have all loved it. Everybody in the chat has loved it. Don't forget, everybody, that we are here every weekday between 12 and 1 with a fabulous guest, not quite as fabulous as Claire, everybody else. No, we have a fabulous guest every single day to inspire you and to give you an insight into the way they go about doing their work. It doesn't have to end here. You can carry on chatting with us in our Discord, and Tim's just popping the link in for that. But Claire, just any last words for everybody before we wrap up for the day?
Well, one of the things that always sticks with me is to just experiment, and don't judge your ideas before you've seen the results. That's what I would say. Sound words. Fantastic. Yeah. Right, well, from myself and the lovely Mads, right then.
Bye, everyone.
I'll be seeing you tomorrow. Mads, you're not with me tomorrow, I don't think. All right. No, I won't be seeing you tomorrow. Actually, I'm doing something else. So you are here, I think.
I'm here.
Who knows where we are?
I'll be here with Rufus. Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm in the back room. There we go. Anyway, everybody, take care. Stay creative, and cheerio. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.